What is up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of the NerdBall Fantasy Football Show. I am your humble host, dendrologist specializing in the conservation of the endangered Robert Woods, and astronaut aboard the Pitts 8 Moon Expedition, Pete Rodgers. And I am joined today by a fellow nerd, the lead saxophonist for De'Ami Brown and the Downtown Funky Crown Band, and closer friend to Aaron Rodgers than David Bakhtiari, the working girl Jordan Smith. Jordan, how you doing today?
I'm doing well. How are you after our first week of NFL action?
I'm good, though I'll say that it wasn't really a great week for either of our preferred teams, as both the Patriots and the Packers lost. Though, I mean, Patriots lost by one. The Packers, a different tale was told.
Yeah, the Packers look like they didn't get off the bus. So at some point, I was just like, you know what? Going back to red zone. Fired that up. I had a good fantasy week, so I couldn't be too down about it.
There you go. That's always, that's the joy of fantasy is that when your preferred team is absolutely shitting the bed, maybe you're blessed with a good week elsewise, or if your fantasy team is also shitting the bed, then it's just an absolutely garbage week. I've had plenty of those where your team loses and your fantasy team, you forgot to start the key player who went off and he just went off on your bench and you lost by a bajillion points. You're like, well, this sucks. I hate everything.
See, this is why I will occasionally, well, not occasionally, every single time. If I have a Packers player on my fantasy team, it's usually like going to be one guy, maybe. I'm not stacking my team with the hometown favorite because if they have a bad week, then you have a terrible week.
That is sound advice. That is very good advice from Jordan Smith that you should take to heart. All right, we're going to jump into week 2 and we're going to go through all the games and talk our favorite starts and sits for the week. And then, of course, spin the wheel of conditions and do some DFS drafting. Excuse me. I want to say, though, in our yearly pick'ems and our yearly game picks, Jordan is currently leading, did pretty well last week, 10-6, and yours truly went 8-9. So I got to get my shit together, and I definitely shouldn't have peer pressure Jordan into picking the Dolphins. That was just setting it all up for failure, setting myself up for failure. Yeah, never good. But let's begin with Thursday night football. The New York Giants heading to Washington to take on the football team. And my play for this game, sleeper start, and he's my stream of the week over on my wide receiver rankings, and that's Sterling Shepard, who saw a ton of work in week 1 playing out of the slot with Evan Ingram missing, and Evan Ingram is again gone this week for week 2 with a calf injury. So Ingram, who's rostered in less than 40% of sleeper leagues, he led the Giants in week 1 with 9 targets, 24% of the target share, and against a Washington football team that has their pass rush is very strong. Their front defense is very good. Jones will be getting the ball out of his hands pretty quickly, I would imagine. And I think that could lead to double-digit targets pretty easily for Shepard. And so he's going to have a big game against the secondary that gave up 2 big games to Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. So that's my play for this game.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm playing Sterling Shepard. I don't know if I'm playing any Giants player other than Saquon Barkley, just out of like general fear of a Jason Garrett.
You don't
offense.
love the combination of Jason Garrett and Daniel Jones that doesn't just ooze confidence in you.
Peak Daniel Jones is driving the ball down the field, getting very close, and then doing something completely stupid with the football.
Fumbling it right away at that 5-yard line.
I would be concerned, especially their offensive line, that like Andrew Thomas hasn't looked good, even though he was a high draft pick. And Washington wasn't terrible last week. They didn't come out as like world beaters like we kind of thought they would on defense, but that could still change. And like nothing can help you get right than a game against the New York Giants sometimes. So, but still, if he's less rostered in less than 40% of sleeper leagues, I mean, he is available. So if you need an extra option, Sterling Shepard has put up points before.
He does know how to do it. I will say, I'm a little worried about Terry McLaurin this week. I've bumped him down in my rankings a good amount, just given the fact that the Giants James Bradbury had a phenomenal season last year for them as their starting cornerback, and with the quarterback change to Tyler Heineke. I always want to say Heineken, and I'm like, well, he's not a beer. But that makes he's in the mid 20s for me this week as a wide receiver, which is upsetting because I love myself some Scary Terry. So please free Scary Terry, football gods. All right, let's move into Sunday's games, starting off with my New England Patriots heading to New Jersey to take on the Jets. Jordan, what's your play for this game?
I'm going to be fading both of the New England tight ends. Both Jonnu Smith and Hunter Henry were at a near even split in week one, 55 snaps for Jonnu and 54 for Hunter Henry. Together, both of these tight ends, if they're one guy, would have been tight end 6 in PPR leagues.
Hunter Smith on points. Or Jonnu Henry.
Hunter Smith, Jonnu Henry. But they only finished, Smith finished tight end 17 and Henry finished tight end 26. So if you're looking at that, I would go with Jonnu Smith if you had to pick one. He did get a little bit more of a target share. He did catch all of his targets, and like I saw the play with his rushing attempt, which was pretty interesting. It was a 6-yard run, nothing like all too inspiring, but at the same time, it makes you think that they might continue to do some very goofy stuff with Jonnu Smith, because Jonnu Smith is like a really good athlete. Like it's an oxymoron to say a athletic tight end, but like the dude can run really well. So if you had to pick one, I would go with Smith, but I'm fading both of them until one of them truly emerges and is like 70% of the snaps.
Yeah. I think that's a good call. I think we knew of this situation going into it, where it definitely feels like Jonnu Smith being the hyper athletic and being a player who's, a move tight end who the Titans did use as a running back at times, like he has rushing plays. He feels like that kind of like more gadgety piece, whereas Hunter Henry, like Jonnu Smith is a PPR guy. Hunter Henry, you're like, he's a standard. I'm hoping he just gets like double-digit touchdowns guy. Like that's where I kind of feel like their fantasy values are going to come from. And I think that you're correct that it's a situation where it's like, let's give it 4 weeks and see how kind of the hierarchy plays out. And then you can kind of adjust and figure out who to start from that point onwards, because of the fact that like, I think we're still, as this offense is still trying to figure out what it is under Mac Jones. I think we as in the fantasy community are still trying to figure out, all right, which of these tight ends should we be prioritizing on a week-to-week basis? And maybe it's neither, which is, as someone who has Jonnu Smith in a couple of leagues, it's tough. Hard to hear that there's no such thing as Jonnu Henry, which, man, blend them into one. It was the high that the fantasy community went when Jonnu Smith got signed to the Patriots, immediately 24 hours later, followed by the low of them being like, we also gave a shit ton of money to Hunter Henry. It's like, oh, well, that was fun while it lasted. Let's move on to the Denver Broncos heading to Jacksonville to take on the Jaguars. And oh, wait, my goodness, we haven't been picking games. Good thing we're only 2 games into it for me to recognize this flaw that we've made. Giants at Washington. Who's your pick?
Washington.
Yeah. Okay, good. Me too. Patriots at Jets. Who's your pick?
I'm going to go with the Pats. The Jets look kind of bad. So
the Jets did, and especially with Mekhi Becton out with his knee injury. I think that's going to be something for the Jets offense. A Jets offense that I had a lot of fantasy hopes for. I was really excited about them and their potential. It seems like it might take a little bit of time before that comes to fruition, given the injuries that they sustained and how that offensive line just looked in week 1. All right, catching up now. Back to Denver at Jacksonville. Jacksonville, who did not look good against the Houston Texans, which is something we talked about last week. And like, if the Jaguars look bad against Texans, yikes, could be a rough season for the Jaguars. But I'm going to talk about the Broncos here, and my sleeper start for this game. And maybe it's a sleeper, maybe it's not. Continuing our tight end conversation, Noah Fant. I'm going to give some love to Noah Fant after an offseason in which I've been pretty low on him. I do think that this is a Cortland Sutton, I'm a top 10 receiver, hear me roar game, given the matchup. But wanted to give some love to Fant. He led the team in targets in week 1 with 8. He caught 6 of them for 62 yards. And the Jaguars, like I said, looked absolutely terrible against the Houston Texans. And even their no-name tight end, Thomas Farrow. There's a Farrow somewhere in his name, like put 62 yards on them out of nowhere, and is like a super deep waiver wire ad if you're really desperate at the position. So I think Noah Fant, given the fact that there's no more Jerry Jeudy, who's out with a high ankle sprain, I think Fant is going to be the apple of Teddy Bridgewater's eye. He's going to see a lot of targets against a bad Jaguar secondary. Seems like a recipe for a pretty solid, maybe even top 5 finish in fantasy this week.
Yeah, I saw one good play by Jacksonville that was basically Josh Allen, the linebacker Josh Allen, chasing down Tyrod Taylor. But other than that, of course, your rookie QB is going to have growing pains. All of them did at some point this past week, all those who started and played significant snaps, that is. But Jacksonville, I think I was a little bit too optimistic on them based on their roster. And I forgot to follow, and it is only week 1, like all the caveats, week 1. But I think I forgot to take into account that my rule against college coaches coming into the NFL is like, I don't trust them. And I forgot about Urban Meyer and his, he's got more of a personality, let's say, than some of the other more recent
Urban Meyer, who's like already getting questions
coaches
about, are you going to leave to go coach USC? Not a great sign when you're one game into the season and your coach is already having to field questions about leaving the team to go coach back in college. Jaguars.
I always think of Nick Saban because I think he was the first. Like, obviously, there's Jimmy Johnson and other coaches before him that came from college and went to the pros. But I think of Nick Saban because that was like one of them that happened as I was growing up and really getting into football, is Nick Saban going to the Dolphins and then just kind of flaming out super fast and being like, I got to get out of here. He goes to Alabama, and no matter how many championships he wins in Alabama at the college level, he's like, I'm good. Like, I need to go anywhere else. So
feels like that well could be in Urban Meyer's future. Denver Jags, who you got winning the game?
I'm gonna go Denver.
I was so confident in the Jaguars last week, and Trevor Lawrence didn't look. He had some bad interceptions, but he had a gorgeous throw to DJ Chark down the field for a touchdown. So part of me still kind of wants to believe, but I'm gonna ride on Jordan's coattails because Jordan has the better record between the two of us. So if I just match him point for point from here on out, then he can never grow his lead. This is a perfect strategy for me. Buffalo Bills heading to Miami to take on the Dolphins. What do you like?
So for this game, sticking a little negative here from my last one too, is I'm fading Devonte Parker. He finished as the wide receiver 49 after week 1, and that was against a Stephon Gilmore-less Patriots team, which isn't a great sign because Devonte Parker is kind of the de facto number 1. Put him on the outside. He's going to draw your best cornerback matchup. And that means that Trey White from Buffalo could be shadowing him for the duration of this game. The Bills defense was pretty good against the Steelers this week. They did get 2 sacks and a forced fumble. And I think that despite Buffalo losing that game, they still kind of had it was kind of a boxing match in like it was a lot of regards, because it was low scoring, not as like air out as everybody might have thought it could have been. But with the Trey White shadow, with Will Fuller potentially getting snaps, and Jalen Waddle, I think, is going to be a better play here. The touchdown did boost his numbers, but I like that he was the red zone target on that 3-yard touchdown. So that's something that you kind of have to file that note away, remember it, that Tua went to his guy Waddle in a really important possession. So I'm fading Devontae Parker. And if I had to choose a Dolphin to start, other than the obvious, like Tua, I think could be a pretty decent start this week, but I'm going with Jalen Waddle out of any of the pass catchers.
I totally agree with you. Devonte Parker feels like entirely the forgotten man in this passing game. Particularly, like, also remember all of the time that he had success last year or 2 years ago, whenever those moments where he had like his really big performances, those were all with Ryan Fitzpatrick under center. It wasn't Tua throwing the football. So Tua clearly something isn't vibing or connecting between Devonte Parker and Tua. And that connection is just like pushed him further and further down the depth chart and further down fantasy rankings. I have him, I think, like as a wide receiver. I don't even think I have him as a wide receiver 40 this week, just because of the fact that we saw Jalen Waddle get that important look. Also, you said it. Will Fuller is back, and maybe he gets snaps. I think he's definitely, I have him ranked as like my wide receiver 37 or 36 this week, because Will Fuller is a perennial, wide receiver 1 in fantasy whenever he's on the field. He is back after finishing his suspension that he had starting last year for the PED use. I think Will Fuller is an automatic plug and play guy, and Devonte Parker is just in this already crowded offense in terms of this passing tree. I just think Devonte Parker is going to be the odd man out. So I think fading him is 100% the right call and right play. Well done. Well done. You picking Buffalo to win?
Yeah, I like Buffalo to bounce back.
Yeah. Well, right in the coattails. Yep. Buffalo's my pick as well. Eventually we'll have different picks. I promise everyone. I promise. All right. San Francisco 49ers heading to Philly to take on the Eagles, an Eagles team that looked saucy, quite saucy with Jalen Hurts, picking apart a Falcons defense that we all knew was sucked. But anyways, my play for this game, I think you straight up sit Brandon Aiyuk this week. And I would set him until we know what is ultimately going on here, because there is a lot of coach speak coming out of San Francisco. And if you want to believe it, it does not paint a good picture for Aiyuk. Shanahan's exact words, and I quote, were, if he wants to be out there every single play, he's got to be a lot better than the guy behind him. Damning words from your head coach. The Eagles allowed the fewest receiving points, fantasy points last week against the Falcons. Calvin Ridley had a bad game. Obviously, Russell Gage didn't do anything. Kyle Pitts didn't do anything. This Eagles defense did a great job rifling Matt Ryan's feathers. Little bird pun there, and getting after him in the passing game. So until we figure out exactly what Aiyuk's situation is in San Francisco, even if it means I miss a smash week, even if it means I miss a wide receiver 1 week from Brandon Aiyuk, I am going to keep him on my bench until he shows me something, because the situation doesn't seem great. It feels a lot like Trey Sermon, where it was like the incumbent, you thought this guy was going to get all the touches, and it seems like there's behind the scene things that are not lending itself to be that.
Yeah. In one of my leagues, I sat Brandon Aiyuk and put in Brandon Cooks instead. So I'm just trading
right
Brandon
sky high.
That's how tenuous I think this situation is. I saw on Twitter, I'm not reporting this at all. It wasn't
breaking news.
Source,
Jordan's sources are whispering. The birds are talking.
But I mean, the fact that somebody said this and that I saw it and I was like, well, that could actually be true, is also not a good sign. It was that there was a sense that maybe Trey Sermon and Brandon Aiyuk missed a curfew. I don't know if you saw that rumor floating around, but I think that's a possibility for why we didn't see either of these two guys in this game. So this is another situation where, for me, I'm going to probably sit you until further notice. Like, I need to see you back on the field and actually getting targets and beating out Trenton Sherfield.
Yeah.
The heck. Like,
not a good sign.
Not great.
When you were after a very strong rookie year, come in and get beaten out by some dude named, I thought it was Trent Taylor, because I was like, oh, the 49ers have a guy named Trent. I am just going to assume it's the other Trent that I knew, but it's not. It's a different Trent. So many Trents in the world. Yeah. And good old Deebo Samuel coming out for an absolute smash week against the Detroit Lions. I love to see that. I am going to be saucy here, and I'm going to pick Philly to win this game. Philly's at home. I think that Jalen Hurts, I liked what I saw at Jalen Hurts. Are you doing that too?
We'll see.
Okay. I just like what I saw out of Jalen Hurts. I think that the 49ers took a big hit in their secondary with Jason Verrett getting injured. And I don't know, this 49ers team, a lot of stuff happening behind the scenes, it seems. So I like Philly getting it done at home.
Yeah, this one was tough because I was going to talk myself into San Francisco because I was like, oh, Philadelphia just kind of played a team that looked like they were just on their heels all day.
Mm-hmm.
And they just weren't ready. And you saw a handful of those across the league last week.
Yeah.
But San Francisco also played Detroit. So it's
barely
like,
won.
Yeah, they almost didn't get out of there. I feel like this gambling line is like Philly -3. Like it's very close.
Yeah.
I'm going to go with San Francisco.
All right.
That was my initial choice. That was my gut.
There it is. Go with the gut. Our first break of the week so far. Los Angeles Rams, after Matty Stafford just lit the Bears up, heading to Indianapolis to take on the Colts. What's your play for this game?
Yeah, it's nice to see another NFC North team just tank. All four of them did on Monday.
You got all of them
in week one.
They all tanked in week one.
So
all four of them sucked it up. So there you go. At least you can take comfort in that.
It's great. We're all in the misery together. My start this week, it's going to be short and simple. Cooper Kupp. It's clear that he and Matt Stafford have some sort of connection, which, I mean, Cooper Kupp is a great possession wide receiver, so he can establish a connection pretty easily with any decent to above average quarterback. Kupp was peppered with 10 targets against the Bears. I think the Colts will be a little bit stronger defensively, but the Bears were pretty bad. I don't know if the Colts defense is much better though, given all the turnaround there and whatnot. But I'm following volume here. Volume is king with Cooper Kupp. I like the 10 targets.
Yeah. I mean, you absolutely love that. And you can't argue against it. Also, like Kupp, one of his big touchdowns, or one of his big plays, I should say, was the Bears just like busted coverage and they just didn't switch on him. But he had another, like, he was getting open down the field and making big down the field plays, which I feel like is a little unique for him. And we saw against the Colts against the Seahawks, like Tyler Lockett had 2 monster touchdowns against them too. So like the Colts defense is also susceptible, was getting busted over the top, and Tyler Lockett is a speedster and Cooper Kupp is not that. But, that was how Kupp was being effectively utilized in McVay's offense week 1. And so I think you could see similar results in week 2 in a game that, I think the Rams are going to win pretty handedly. I'm going to pick them just because, damn it, Matt Stafford looked good, and this defense looks like it was all that it was chalked up to be.
Yeah. To your point, yeah, Cooper Kupp was getting deep shots. He wasn't just hitting crossers and Matthew Stafford dumping it off. I am going to go with the Rams as well. I don't know if Quentin Nelson is going to be back. Is he back yet?
I thought he played week 1.
I might be confusing him with Zach Martin, who obviously did not play. Either way, I think Aaron Donald and them boys are going to be able to get after Carson Wentz and get in his face. So
yeah, no, I think that's going to be true. I also do not like any Colts wide receivers in fantasy. Michael Pittman Jr., don't do it. Like he didn't see a huge target share. He didn't see a lot of production in week 1 against the Seahawks, a matchup that he should have taken advantage of, is presumed the number 1 wide receiver. And now you get Jalen Ramsey and this Rams secondary that looked 100% legit against the Bears. So yeah, not firing up anyone in the Colts. Jonathan Taylor is the only guy in the Colts offense, and Nyheim Hines, the only 2 guys in this offense who I'm firing up with confidence this week in fantasy. Moving on to the Las Vegas Raiders after a big Monday night victory against the Baltimore Ravens. Whew, did you watch that game?
I did watch it. Yeah.
The game was an utter shit show at the end, but wildly entertaining. Very, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed watching our week 1 gods, Sammy Watkins and Hollywood Brown, go off like we said they would. They would. They thrive. They live for week 1, and they more than lived up to it. Anyways, they're playing the Pittsburgh Steelers in Pittsburgh. Am I a smash start for this game? it's an easy play. It's Najee Harris. You drafted him for this like exact reason. This is the first game of the season for Najee Harris managers. Don't worry about week 1. 100% of the Steelers offensive snaps, Najee Harris played, and 100% of the running back touches Najee Harris got. That is undeniable workload that is going to, the production is going to come, especially against a Raiders defense that just finished up giving the most rushing yards of week 1 and graded out as the second worst run defense per NEF rating, just behind the Chiefs. So this is going to be that game where Najee Harris comes in, makes a huge, week, big imprint as a rookie, and Najee Harris managers everywhere will celebrate and rejoice for having spent, a high second or even maybe a late first to get their guy.
Yeah, I started to drink the Najee Harris Kool-Aid towards the end of the off season, just because the numbers made sense for Najee Harris to at least have a decent year, because first round running backs traditionally do, except for like some jobs that up. But I still don't have any faith in this Pittsburgh offensive line. Like it still worries me. So I still am in like wait and see mode for myself personally. But I think
that's totally true. I think Najee Harris's efficiency this season is going to be god awful, but in matchups where you're playing, when there are like clear advantages, you got it. Like these are the matchups that you drafted him for, and you got to let him ride, and you got to trust that the Steelers offensive line can't be that bad. If the Steelers cannot run the ball, or if Najee Harris can't run the ball this week against the Raiders, then it might be time to panic and start thinking about fielding offers for him and trying to sell him to someone who maybe has some confidence in him in week 2, or moving on to the season, because if the Steelers offense can't get the ground game going against a Raiders team that we saw the Ravens team that the Ravens just absolutely torched on the ground, then that's a terrible sign moving forward.
Yeah, you're obviously going to start Harris because you probably drafted him to be your first or second running back. So it's like too early to just pull the plug now. I'm going to go with Pittsburgh to win the game, because I think just because the Raiders won last week in overtime, that doesn't make them a good team. So
I also think that I agree with you. I'm going to pick Pitt as well, but I also think that whatever they're calling it now, but like the Raiders Stadium could be a pretty good home field advantage from here on out. Like that stadium was bumping throughout the game, and I feel like it could emerge as like one of the better home field advantages in the NFL in the next couple of years. Also, Deontay Johnson is the Steelers' number 1 wide receiver, so start him, you bums. Don't overthink this. Cincinnati Bengals heading to Chicago to take on the Bears. What do you like?
So I'm going to go ahead and start Joe Mixon.
Good for you.
Which is a pretty easy call, but I would call it a pretty confident start. So like last week, despite a game that went to overtime, Mixon was still readily evolved in the running game. He had like 29 rushes. Sometimes you can start to see in games that are going to overtime or like really close towards the end of the games, those kind of just collapse into, we're going to just chuck the ball all over the field because we got to score as quickly as possible. But Mixon getting 29 rushes during the span of that game is pretty damn impressive, especially for a Bengals team that you kind of thought would be like Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd. Like we are going to go all over the place with it. But volume is king once again here. And then he faces a Chicago Bears team, which we already touched on, but they ranked 28th in rush defense DVOA after week 1. So they were struggling against the Rams, which is, I guess, Zach Taylor's old-ish team.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
that's right. Zach Taylor. What a coaching tree he stems from. 29 touches or 29 carries. And then another, 4 catches for Joe Mixon. Like he was getting involved in the passing game too, which
catches or targets. I can't remember which,
maybe
either
it was
way.
just target. Yeah. But like that was where Darrell Henderson put in work against the Bears on whatever it was, Sunday night. So I think, yeah, Joe Mixon, the usage that we saw out of week one, should anyone who drafted Joe Mixon, you probably drafted him with like there's a little bit of risk here. We'll see what he does and whether or not the Bengals actually give him a full, 30 plus touches per game workload. And he did in week one. And so you are going to ride that for as long as possible and as long as you see it. And I think against the Bears is going to be another instance where you could see Joe Mixon get a big workload, especially since the offense seems to be kind of like slowing Joe Burrow down and maybe not passing the ball as much or as aggressively to kind of take pressure off of Burrow. And like what we said about how Cooper Kupp was getting behind this Bears defense, Ja'Marr Chase is going to roast this Bears defense. So he's also someone who I'm pretty happy and confident in firing up this week. Who you have winning this game?
This one seems like another pretty decently even matchup because, despite the record difference, I don't think Cincinnati is that great either. I'm going to give it to Chicago with the home field advantage.
All right. Go ahead.
So that's my irrationality.
That's your rationality.
It's just
the Windy City.
Irrational entirely.
I'm going to go Cincy. I liked what I saw out of Cincy, and I can't help but drink the Joe Burrow, Ja'Marr Chase Kool-Aid because.
Hey, I got to eat some crow on Ja'Marr Chase from last week too, because I was definitely proven wrong. He was running like really great routes.
He was roasted Patrick Peterson.
It made you wonder if like the reports out of training camp were just entirely like completely wrong. I don't know what the
fire the entire beat staff. If the biggest thing coming out of your training camp was that Ja'Marr Chase can't get open, and then he just like absolutely toasts the Vikings secondary in week one for 100+ yards, your whole beat staff is gone. You're fired. Because that is not the takeaway that clearly should be taken from what was happening off field. All right, Houston Texans, after winning a game, which was more than we ever thought they were going to do, heading to Cleveland to take on the Browns. I got two things in this game that I like. One, Jarvis Landry with OBJ again out, which is a little worrisome for Odell Beckham managers. This is not great because things were looking, he was supposed to play week one and then he didn't. And now he's already out for week two. Anyways, Landry saw a team high at 5 targets, 71 yards. And then he got also involved in the run game, which I love. 2 carries, 13 yards and a touch. He's going to be heavily involved as Baker's number 1 wide receiver against the Texans, a secondary that got beat up a couple times against the Jaguars. Like I said, they let up a couple big passes to DJ Chark. So I think Landry is going to be a volume is king guy, and probably we'll see, 7 to 9 targets, and that should let him finish as a solid flex this week. Also, I know Mark Ingram had 26 carries last week, but I'm going to sit him. Browns graded out as a top 10 run defense last week. And I don't really think that 30-plus-year-old Mark Ingram is going to get another 25-plus carries in back-to-back weeks. Plus, he didn't really see much work in the passing game, which is where David Johnson did see work. So I think this backfield is going to be complete and utter chaos. And that Mark Ingram's week 1 performance is kind of fluky and not something you should rely on.
Yeah, I think my favorite tweet from the weekend was, what exactly did the Chargers stick to Rod Taylor with? Like, what size needle? What did they actually do to this man? Because he looked good. He looked like a good NFL quarterback who, granted, he played a pretty terrible Jacksonville Jaguars team that just looked like they did not get off the bus when they got to the stadium. He looked good. Thank you, Brandon Cooks. I want to shout you out because you helped me in a couple spots this week. And
Brandon Cooks, perpetually underrated. I know Nick loves to bring up his concussion history, and yes, that's something you need to take.
Significant.
It is. You need to take that into consideration. But when Brandon Cooks is on the field, that man does nothing but ball out.
They told us this offseason to unload on Brandon Cooks, even though he was the only passing option. And that volume was not going to be enough for Brandon Cooks because the Texans were supposed to be too bad, but they at least get to play Jacksonville one more time, and they get to play some other pretty terrible teams along the way. So I think Brandon Cooks can be a pretty good start it every now and then.
I mean, the Cardinals just absolutely put up monster numbers against the Titans defense, and they get to play that twice. And then the Seahawks roasted the Colts defense. Like Brandon Cooks probably in for another very calm ho-hum 1,000 yards, 1,000 yards and 6 touchdowns. And everyone will be like, oh, Brandon Cooks, good at football. Who knew? Are we both taking Cleveland to win this?
Yeah, I thought they probably should have beat Kansas City. Really if it was a normal team, like they probably would have won. I also want to agree with your Jarvis Landry start, because as long as Odell is out, like Jarvis Landry is Baker's favorite target, even when Odell is in. Yeah. So it's like, yeah, I'm playing him.
I know. I started Donovan Peoples-Jones last week. I got real saucy, and I was like, all right, OBJ is out. We saw what Peoples-Jones can do. This is going to be a shootout. The Chiefs give up a ton of yards. And I think I even brought him up on last week's show where I was like, sneaky sleeper play, Donovan Peoples-Jones. And then he got like 1 target for 1 catch for 20 yards or something like that. And I was like, well, that sucks.
Yeah.
So yeah, if Donovan Peoples-Jones is not going to replace the Odell, then it's all the targets are going to be funneled through Landry. New Orleans Saints last game on the morning slate or midday slate. New Orleans Saints heading to Carolina to take on the Panthers. Jameis Winston after throwing 5 touchdowns against the Packers. Jordan, what do you like?
So for this matchup, I'm going to be fading Juwan Johnson. I just want people to caution themselves with Johnson's performance, because while it was really good from a fantasy perspective, it's kind of there's a chance it could be fool's gold in a one-off game. He's been a popular waiver wire ad, but again, concerned about his usage. He did get those 2 touchdowns, and one of them is just like it was a leaping touchdown grab. He's going to probably be a good red zone target, kind of like Mo Alley Cox was last year for a little while, like a very big catch radius type of tight end, soaking up red zone touchdowns. But he only played 12 snaps, and like he was targeted just 3 times. Yes, though he turned 2 of those 3 targets into touchdowns.
It's a Randy Moss stat line.
That's efficient, but 12 snaps is pretty dicey to me. I'm not sure I would trust him with back-to-back weeks until I see him get more snaps than Adam Troutman, who's kind of like more of the higher pedigree drafted tight end that they drafted specifically to fill a certain role. And he's already is a better blocking tight end. So I think that affected it a little as well. Carolina did also play a pretty meager Jets team last week. I mean, not great for Robert Saleh's crew. But Carolina did finish 5th in pass DVOA. So while I don't think they're the top 5 pass defense, I do think that they can put the clamps on a particular player when they want to. So you've got to be a little bit careful on the high variance Juwan Johnson.
Yeah. Adam Troutman had a team high target share in week 1 and played 82% of the Saints snaps. So like that is the Saints tight end 1. Like he led the team in targets. He played the most snaps. It just didn't click. And so I think Juwan Johnson is 100% one of those guys where it's a huge week 1 and you're like, awesome, but that's not the tight end that the Saints are going to rely on moving forward.
When I was creating this fade, I was thinking about Juwan Johnson in the way that like maybe you try to snag like Kyle Juszczyk for a running back spot during a bye week, and you're just like, give me those like 2 1-yard touchdowns, Juszczyk. You can do it. And sometimes he does it, but occasionally it's like, or not so occasionally, but other times it's like, no, that was a dumb play. I tried something, high variance.
Well, now we have to worry about who is the Raiders fullback who suddenly was getting peppered with targets. Both fullbacks for the Ravens and Raiders were getting peppered with targets.
Alec Ingold. He's from Green Bay.
4 catches for 22 yards on 4 targets. And then Patrick Ricard, 2 catches on 3 targets for 15 yards. So Fullbacks getting involved. Who says the fullback position is dead in football? No one. Saints over Carolina. Who you got winning?
I'm gonna go with Carolina.
Woo, saucy. I'm gonna ride with Jameis. I'll go with Jameis. I'm a little upset. I should have joined you, Jordan, on the Sam Darnold revenge narrative. I thought that the Jets were going to be better, and I should have known after watching them for my entire life, because I am a Patriots fan and I've watched the AFC East for my entire life. I should have known the Jets are just garbage always and forever, and should not have picked against Sam Darnold seeking revenge against his old team. Before we move on to the afternoon games, I want to let you know, dear listeners, that we have a Patreon, patreon.com/nerdballff. We have all kinds of perks there for those who wish to join, including joining our staff Discord channel and talk football during the season, our starts and sit hotline, where you can ask us your most pressing starts and sit question and they'll be answered. Plus, you can be able to submit questions to be answered live on this podcast or any of our podcasts on the podcast channel. So if you'd like to support us, and we appreciate everything you're willing to offer and give, go to patreon.com/nerdballff. All right, let's move on to the afternoon game, starting with the Minnesota Vikings heading to Arizona to take on the Cardinals. And for me, I am fading, you could say. Worry start is maybe another way to say it. Dalvin Cook, the Cardinals defense is coming off holding Derrick Henry to 58 yards on 17 carries. And Dalvin Cook is just coming off of 61 yards on 20 carries and a fumble. And that number is going to be boosted because he scored a touchdown where Derrick Henry wasn't able to score a touchdown. But both of those guys are wildly ineffective stat lines. And that's an ineffective usage against a Bengals defense that doesn't bode well when you're working up against Chandler Jones and JJ Watt and Isaiah Simmons, who was looking like a terror against the Titans. So Dalvin Cook is someone whom you can never not play these guys, but he's definitely someone who I'm worried about not coming through and putting a big performance, or his traditional RB1 performance that we're used to seeing. He feels more like an RB2 outing coming out of him.
Yeah, I'm also concerned about Dalvin Cook, and particularly this is kind of a perpetual worry, but the Vikings offensive line. Mm-hmm. I feel like they still haven't quite cracked that code. Tennessee is definitely one of those teams last week, though, that I feel like just kind of came out and got kicked in the teeth. Like, their performance was not really indicative of who they are as a football team and who they're going to be in the second half of the season. We've
certainly not Taylor Llewellyn, who apologized to everyone for his terrible performance and thanked Chandler Jones for absolutely roasting his ass for five sacks.
Yeah, like, some of these teams just came out on week one and they just laid an egg. Like, sometimes they're just not ready to go. And even like some of the best players like Aaron Rodgers or Taylor Lewan on the Titans offensive line, they just turn in duds. And that sometimes happens. Sometimes it takes people a little while to get their wheels spinning, despite how long they've been doing this.
Especially since I didn't think about this until right now. This is the first season where you've had that kind of preseason bye week. You had 3 preseason games, a bye week, and then you're going into football. And so I wonder if that has something to do with it. I wonder if that is kind of messing with people's calendars, because normally you're doing, even the game 4 of preseason, no one traditionally of note played in it. It was presumably or predominantly just backups. But even just having that, the routine maybe get interrupted by that kind of first week bye before entering week 1, maybe that threw some people off. Before we pick this game, do you feel confident in Justin Jefferson returning to form this week against the Cardinals? Because it was worrisome. His usage was worrisome in week 1.
Yeah, I was loving that Adam Thielen game, though. I'm a little concerned. Overall, though, I think he will maybe not return to form, because last year's form was pretty impressive. Like, to get back to that historic second year, it was pretty historic. But I still think he'll be a good player. I don't know if it'll be this week against Arizona, but at some point, yes. Like, I wouldn't sit him at all.
Good call. Who you got winning?
I'm gonna go with Arizona.
Yeah. I think if I had more confidence, if the Vikings had anyone other than Kirk Cousins under center, I'd be like, yes, bounce back game. Let's ride. Kirk Cousins just feels like vanilla and bland. And when you've got Kyler Murray on the other side, who's doing some ridiculous Kyler Murray things against the Titans, I have a feeling that will continue against the Vikings defense that looked less than good, we shall say, against the Bengals in week 1. All right, the Atlanta Falcons, speaking of less than good, holy moly, head to Tampa Bay to take on the Buccaneers. What's your play in this game?
Atlanta, another team that came out flat and got kicked in the teeth. My play, though, is to still start Calvin Ridley. I'm not shying away from him, despite having a pretty saucy matchup last week and being Calvin Ridley without Julio Jones. That's a pretty good situation fantasy-wise, or at least it should be. I'm not shying away from him yet because in 2 games against Tampa last season, he had 12 and 14 targets over those 2 games. One of them was an absolute explosion for 183 yards or 163 yards, one of those 2 numbers, which was absolutely bonkers. And I think that the Cowboys played some surprisingly good offense against a team that we were all just 22 starters, Super Bowl champs. They're back. We saw what they did to everybody in the playoffs. The Cowboys might have figured something out, and that was maybe not run the ball as much against Tampa and pass out of the formations that they were. It helps that they have the pass catching talent that they do in Dallas, but they also have Zeke Elliott, and they're just no, we're still not going to use Zeke Elliott. We're going to go with what's working. And I think Atlanta, this would be a worry start for Mike Davis, of course, especially after last week. But I think if Atlanta is following the Cowboys blueprint, which I think they should, Calvin Ridley can still be a major factor.
Yeah, I think for Mike Davis, this is a complete fade week because not only the game plan might take it away from Mike Davis's hands, but also this Buccaneers defense looked fully legit, even when they were giving the ball to Zeke. And I understand that the Cowboys offensive line was banged up, but the Falcons offensive line is just straight up not good. So it doesn't matter if they're all healthy. Zeke wasn't getting any yards against them in Thursday Night Football. So I like the call of Ridley. You're not going to sit him. I like the call. I personally think this is, Kyle Pitts is a continue play because of just the fact that the volume and work was all there and it just needs to click and get put together. And that might take some time, but you shouldn't lose faith. I lose faith in a person when when it's just they're not even getting looks, but if they're getting looks and it's just not happening right now, it's week 1, people are figuring it out. I wouldn't be too worried about it. I also think that I'm glad to see that Mike Evans is back to his usual game of, am I going to be good this week or not? Which is always a fun game to play as we try to figure out whether or not Mike Evans is going to be a wide receiver 3 or the wide receiver 1 and score 2 touchdowns on 100 yards. So eventually he'll get his 1,000 yards this season, but it could be one of those frustrating seasons where it happens, every 3rd game.
Mike Evans is about to score 18 points. It's going to be a Mike Evans game because what do you have 2 catches on 3 targets or if that? It's coming back to him.
100%. The pendulum always swings back to him. I know I have him ranked as my 3rd of the Bucs. I have Chris Godwin and Antonio Brown both ranked above Mike Evans this week in my wide receiver rankings. And I can probably say with supreme confidence that Mike Evans will finish as a top 5 fantasy wide receiver this week, despite the fact that I have him in the mid-20s. I feel like it's not going to be too much of a guess on my part to say that we're both going to take the Bucs, but are you going to pick the Bucs in this one? Yeah. I think if the Falcons had been saucier, even if they had lost, even if they still lost in week 1, if they just looked more competent against the Eagles, I'd be like, look, divisional battles, who knows what the hell happens in those games. And I'd be like, let's ride with the Falcons. But the Falcons looked absolutely lost and trashed as they were learning a new offense. So I'm gonna pass on them this week, and I'll go with the Bucs as well. Go ahead.
The Falcons needed to come out and look be more like Baltimore, and that there's plenty to like about what Baltimore did, despite the fact that they lost. I don't know. This felt like they should have came out a little bit stronger.
I wholeheartedly agree. Speaking of teams that should have come out stronger with a connection to Arthur Smith, Tennessee Titans heading to Seattle to take on the Seahawks. And my play for this game is you are confidently starting Chris Carson as an RB2. Week 1 looked worse because he had a fumble, but he still had 16 carries for 91 yards and caught 3 of 3 targets for 26 yards. He was the dominant back in the Seahawks backfield, which is, of course, something we love to see given how much Pete Carroll loves to run the football. Between Chase Edmonds and James Conner, the Cardinals ran the ball 28 times for 116 yards against the Titans in week 1. So Chris Carson, you plug him in your starting lineup, you start him as a high-end wide receiver, high-end RB2, and I think he could finish a top 15 back this week with pretty much ease.
Yeah, I think that the Titans, because of their powerful run game and with Derrick Henry just being a bulldozer, the whole team kind of gets this like reputation for being like bruisers and bullies and beating up on people, but they have had their vulnerabilities on defense over the past couple of years, and they haven't been as strong as their offense. So I think that with Chris Carson being the dominant back, and no matter who the running back is against Tennessee, for right now, I can see them just having really great games. The split between Edmonds and Conner was like a little New England Patriots. It was tight
a perfect 50-50 in terms of touches. I think Chase Edmonds had 12 carries and 4 catches, and James Conner had 16 carries.
Yeah, got to back up to that Arizona game against Minnesota and also be worried about Chase Edmonds and James Conner.
They just, it feels like everything. I wrote this, I do a weekly over on NerdBallFF.com. Go check it out. But I write a weekly, week 1 takeaways. And so I go through each game and I give what I felt was like the biggest fantasy takeaway from each game. And for the Cardinals game, it's just like the Cardinals are going to split touches seemingly. In week 1, the running backs had the exact same touches. In week 1 for the wide receivers, Hopkins had 8 targets. Everyone else saw 5 targets. So it's just like, it seems like, I'm sure there's going to be a hierarchy that maybe plays out after a couple weeks, but for the first quarter of this season or the first 4 weeks of this season, you might be frustrated in terms of who you should be and shouldn't be starting in Arizona.
Yeah, these guys aren't Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. So
no. You can tell that Tennessee and Seattle offer a lot of fun fantasy content when we pretty immediately move back to Arizona and we're like, all right, we're done with this. There's nothing here really to talk about. Nothing from an exciting standpoint, to say the least. Are you picking who you got to win? I'm gonna go with Seattle. I just, Seahawks at home. You always got to pick that.
Yeah, I'm going with the Seahawks at home.
Though I will say, Russell Wilson did not watch as much tape as he probably could have and should have, since he spent so much time talking to Peyton and Eli on Monday Night Football. And Sierra was at the Met Gala, which is just like, Russell, come on, this is your time to study. I bet you he comes out and he throws one really bad interception against the Titans because he didn't film study enough.
See, Sierra just pulling out the wife version of being a wife guy. Like, is it a husband gal?
Husband gal? That seems right.
The absolute insanity of wearing like a jersey dress is hilarious. But
love it. I want to give shout out to Charlotte Wilder on Twitter, who was like, she was like, I want to start a fund. How much would it take to get Russell Wilson to wear that in game? And it's like Russell Wilson in a bedazzled, bejeweled, bright green Seahawks jersey. Hey, I'd pay money to see that. I would help fund that, Charlotte. I'd help fund the petition to get that happening. I don't know how much it would take. Probably a lot, because that dress probably costs easily a couple $1,000s, probably $10,000. Probably, I'm still wildly underestimating how much it cost. Dallas Cowboys heading to Los Angeles to take on the Chargers. Oh, this game is going to be good, Jordan.
There's going to be, I think, a lot of offense for a lot of people, particularly Keenan Allen. This is a game where I think Keenan Allen he's obviously a no-brainer start, but I think he's going to have top 5 production this coming week at the wide receiver position. So you got to be confident playing him this week against the Dallas team that saw Gronk and Antonio Brown and Chris Godwin and sorry, Mike Evans, but those 3 other guys were chewing up Dallas last week. And it looks like it's going to be more of the same for Allen here. the Dallas secondary, like I said, looks like it can be picked apart. And the targets that were afforded on the Chargers to Hunter Henry last year seem to just have kind of they just each were separated between Mike Williams and Keenan Allen. There's like, here, you have like 2 or 3 and you have the other 4. And it was a beautiful thing to see because Keenan Allen and Justin Herbert just looked like they were one of the best wide receiver quarterback combos in the league. Like, I'm very excited about them being able to build off their success against, like we already said before, a pretty good Washington defense. So expect them to build on that success from last week and have an even better week out of Allen.
Yeah. I also love Mike Williams this week. I have him ranked as my wide receiver 15, I think, just because like Mike Williams and Keenan Allen, I think, had 13 targets. Mike Williams had 12 targets in week 1. And both of those guys put up big stat lines. And so against the Dallas, this game is going to be, Dallas is just going to perpetually be playing in shootouts. That's how I'm going to treat every single Dallas game. And when Dallas is playing an offense that can rival its own offense, then I am just going to be like, okay, if you fire up everyone in this offense, I bet you Austin Eckler gets 1 target this game, unlike he did in week 1. So Austin Eckler managers, you can like come off the cliff or come down off the roof because he'll get a target. Don't worry. He'll get usage in the passing game, but Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, you guys fire them up confidently as high-end wide receiver or wide receiver 1s and wide receiver 2s, without a doubt. Picking wise, I am going to let you answer first, Jordan, and then I'll decide.
Even though it's going to be like 70% Cowboys fans and 30% Los Angeles Chargers fans in LA this weekend, I'm still going to pick the Chargers.
All right. That decided for me because we got to have different picks. I can only ride your coattails for so long. I'm going to go with Dallas, which is good. I feel like Dallas, I was leaning towards Dallas as well. So that is going to be, that has the recipe for being the game of the week. And again, the NFL kind of pooping the bed because they didn't make it a primetime game. Though Sunday night, Kansas City at Baltimore, it could be really good. Baltimore just, played a very exciting Monday Night Football game, which they lost. And we all know Kansas City is just a stupid team that just shouldn't exist because that offense can score a 75-yard touchdown in 30 seconds, which is preposterous. But this could be a really good game as well. My play for this is firing up the entire Ravens backfield. So Tyson Williams and Latavius Murray. Williams led the backfield with 65 yards on 9 carries. Plus, he caught 3 of 4 targets for 29 yards against the Raiders. He also scored a touchdown. Latavius Murray saw most of his work come after halftime, 10 carries, 28 yards, and he also scored a touchdown. Williams is a clear RB1, but Murray's 10 to 15 touches gives some fantasy viability, especially in this offense whose running game is so effective. And against the Chiefs gave up the most fantasy points to running backs in week 1. The Browns backfield just absolutely torched them. And they famously let teams do that. That is their kind of MO, is they're just like, we're going to let you run on us if you want to. And their offense, the Chiefs offense will score so fast that it doesn't matter that the clock has been draining. So I think you confidently fire Tyson Williams as a RB2. I think that's where I would have him as a top 24 option. And Latavius Murray, I think, is a very solid flex play RB4 if you're in deeper leagues.
Yeah, Tyson Williams definitely looked like the better back last week. Latavius Murray, like, kind of coming in and getting those carries in the second half made it seem like he was kind of just trying to get his feet wet. Like, John Harbaugh was putting him in there just to get him some reps because Tyson Williams was clearly the better back from that matchup. I think you could definitely run on KC. So it just depends on if Baltimore can change anything and make their offense run a little bit more smoothly.
And hold on to the football, Lamar. Please. We love you. That last fumble, though, wasn't really his fault because he just got blindsided by Carl Nassib, who came around that corner and wasn't even blocked. I am going to, if Baltimore had won, I feel like I would have had the confidence to say Baltimore here. And I still kind of want to go with Baltimore. Are you going to go KC?
Yeah, I like Baltimore, but we've seen this movie before.
We have. But that's why the movie's not going to play out this time, Jordan. Lamar Jackson sees the script, he burns the script, and he rewrites the script. And the script ends with him scoring the last second go-ahead touchdown. So you take KC like a plebe, and I will take Baltimore. Monday Night Football. Let's wrap it up. Last game of week 2. The Detroit Lions head to Green Bay. Nothing quite like a good tonic after getting a thorough ass whooping than to play the Detroit Lions at home on Monday night. Jordan, you must be just riding cloud 9 right now. Can't wait to watch your Packers get right, destroying the Lions.
Once again, the NFL completely fumbling the bag by putting the 2 worst teams in the NFL on Monday Night Football. What are you guys doing, schedule makers? No, you know what? Sometimes after getting your salad tossed in Jacksonville, you have to play a little bit of a softer team, which Detroit is. Detroit is not, rivalry games, granted, within division always come with, I feel like, a little bit of extra juice.
Totally.
The teams play a little bit harder. That being said, I'm going to be sitting Robert Tanyan. Tanyan was clearly the top tight end for Green Bay, but his 2 targets for 8 yards on just 4 targets was not great last week. This is an offense that likes to play 1 or 2 tight ends on almost every down. So Tanyan's going to end up being a viable option down the line, I would say. But I think this offense Green Bay, another team that just did not get like on the plane to Jacksonville. I think they were actually in like Orlando at Disney World.
They were at Disney World. They were all getting drunk on the Around the World at Epcot.
Yeah, the guy with the man bun wearing number 12 was like an imposter. Their offense looks bad. But it's going to be guys like Devonte Adams, like Aaron Jones, or even like Randall Cobb towards the end of the game started to get going with Rodgers a little bit. I think some combination of those guys are going to be the ones that really start to get going and producing more fantasy value before Robert Tanyan gets going. And that's that being said, Detroit did lose Jeff Okudah this week. He was their highly drafted defensive back last year. And it's already been pretty bad for Detroit in the secondary, but losing a guy who didn't play great last year, but could have been looking towards taking a step up in his sophomore season, even losing him, it's tough. But even still, I'm sitting Tanyan until further notice.
Yep, I like that call. Obviously, Jamal Williams in a revenge game is going to finish the RB1 again, since that's already in his list of outcomes. He will do it again, and DeAndre Swift will be right behind him. But I said this on Monday's show where we were talking about over week 1 overreactions that we believe, and I'm sorry, Jordan, but we'll see against the Lions are a great tonic. It's a great tonic, and we'll see how the Packers look during that game. But Aaron Rodgers looked like he was still out in the desert, hanging out with Whiplash Boy and Miles Teller, and doing illicit things while he was playing that game. It didn't quite look teen in. So I would love for both fantasy wise and for my own home, because Sundays are not fun when the Packers lose. Becca gets very quiet and her rage builds up inside. I'm just not, we'll see. I'm not sold that the Packers offense is going to return to form, even though they're playing the Lions this week.
Yeah, I think at some point they're going to get back. They just were a team that looked like they got hit early and then they did not even want to attempt to shake it off. I think that's hard to do when taking a trip down Narrative Street, you have
Narrative Street.
2 of your top guys, 2 of your leaders kind of bringing all this like late summer drama about making this like one last dance. And this is the last time and we're going to go out together. And like, if that's the case, then Like, how many other people are feeling pretty inspired in the Packers building? Like, your two top guys, your leaders, is like, oh, well, I mean, fuck this guy. He's going to leave after a year.
He just spent all offseason like building a way to get out. And now he's got to like amp up and be like, all right, guys, we're going to do this though. I'm here. I am here to stay. It's like, is he
needs to do like for Ted Lasso fans out there, when Jamie comes back to the team, he needs to do like a one-on-one, like everybody air out your grievances towards me. And like, yeah, you had a diva off seasons and now people are probably not as inspired to play right away as they would have been otherwise. But I bet getting your ass kicked pretty handily by Jameis Winston will humble you quickly. So I expect them to be back and better this week at home.
I am not daring enough to say though that they will lose to the Lions, and I assume you shan't either. So we'll both wrap up our week 2 picks, locked arm in unistep again, as we both pick the Packers, I assume.
Yeah, I'll stay with the Packers for now.
Oh,
I almost want to pick against them as like
as a reverse jinx.
When you do that thing where you're mad at a player on your team, so you like demote them to the flex position. You're
the best, the absolute best. It means absolutely nothing, but there's so much catharsis in being like, all right. You know who I would do that all the time with was Todd Gurley. Todd Gurley was like the king of being like, you're my RB1, but this week, because you didn't play well last week, you're going to be my flex. And then he would go off and you'd be like, all right, back to the RB1. Yeah. They play for that reason. Players play hard because you as a fantasy manager moved them into your flex. So it's a brilliant strategy to get the job done. All right. Well, there's all of our plays for week 2. And before we go, it is time to bust out Wheel of Conditions, where we spin the wheel and we figure out what constraint or condition are we going to have to draft a DFS lineup with for this week. And I have to say, Jordan already knows this. Our 30 and over lineup last week, it made $5. So it not only paid for itself, but then some. It was a $3 buy-in. And so we made $2 profit off of that. So that is 100% a win. And so let us share my screen, and we are going to draft a team after we spin this wheel. And our condition is their last name has to start with a C. So we have to draft a team whose last name starts with a C. Not
Cook and Chubb. Put it on there.
Cook and Chubb already. So we're just going to start right there. That's an easy one. I know I just talked about how Dalvin Cook is not worth his high price tag this week, and now he's a fade. But, you know, we'll see. Maybe there's some other running back options that we would like over Cook. But Chubb is 100% a play. I guess, are we stuck with Kirk Cousins? Derek Carr?
None of these are very inspiring.
Kirk Cousins, let's make the narrative. The Arizona Cardinals defense actually was pretty good against the Titans, but that was because Chandler Jones had 5 sacks, which they could do against a pretty shitty Minnesota line.
Wait, who did the Las Vegas Wallers play? Or who did they play this week?
They play the Steelers this week.
Steelers. Ooh, well, that's a tougher defense. I'm going to go with Cousins.
I think so too. I think Cousins, I think they bounce back. I think we see this week that if Arizona can't get pass rush, their secondary is very weak and can get picked on heavily. All right. We're going to skip running back for now, and we'll look at wide receivers. Amari Cooper, I absolutely love against the Chargers this week. And he comes with a high price tag, but I think that is more than worth it.
I'm in on Cooper.
You're in on Cooper?
I feel like I like Amari Cooper more than most.
Yeah. Should we do your boy Brandon Cooks?
Brandon Cooks, my Lord and Savior. Who did they play Cleveland.
But Cleveland, I mean, hey, 75 yards to Tyreek Hill. Who's this next closest receiver to Tyreek Hill? Everyone knows it's Brandon Cooks, right? On the field, not off the field.
Yeah, let's keep Cooks on there for now because who knows what else we're going to find on here.
DJ Chark. Chark led the Jaguars with 12 targets. Ooh, Chase Claypool, double C's.
I kind of like Claypool against Vegas better if that's the way we're going to go.
I like it too. I like Claypool, especially because they're going to get freaky with him. And they're going to do some really cool things, get him involved in the ground and through the air. All right, let's move on to tight end. We'll deal with our flex. We'll come back to the flex. Let's go tight end. Jared Cook, who didn't have a bad game, against Washington and now gets to play Dallas. I feel like that's the
Jared
only.
Cook's a freak athlete.
Yeah, we'll do it. I don't think there's any other C's.
Tyler Conklin. How did he do last week? Did he get the start?
Tyler Conklin, he did,
no
but he got. Let's look at this. Is not a good sign that he's this far down the list. Oh my God, where are you?
Fair.
Jason Chrome. He's below Jason Chrome. I must have missed him.
No, he's up. He's up there. You just passed him.
I passed him.
Yeah.
All right. Where did he go? Tyler Conklin. Is he? Wow. I really passed him. I passed him really early.
Yeah.
Oh, there he is. Tyler Conklin. He had 6 fantasy points going against Arizona. Jared Cook had 8. I like Jared Cook.
Yeah, Jared Cook against Dallas. Why not?
Yeah. All right, flex. What other running backs? I want to go look at running backs again because I'm not sold on Dalvin Cook. I want to see Chris Carson. That's a C.
Oh, yeah.
Got to fire up Chris Carson.
Love Chris Carson.
Do we want another double C? Do we want to try to see if there's anyone to replace Cook? James Conner. We spent a lot of time talking about James Conner. Also, shout out to Cordarrelle Patterson for getting us 7 points as our RB1 in the 30-plus-year-old lineup.
What about well, we can't replace Cook because he's our tight end.
No, I was talking about Dalvin Cook.
Oh, Dalvin Cook. I thought you were talking about Jared Cook. No, there's no one I'd replace Dalvin for.
All right. Okay. Do we want to look at any wide receivers who we might want to? What other C wide receivers are there? DJ Chark, who against Denver, like I said, 12 targets. Only caught 3 of them though. So is that a good sign? Is that a bad sign? Are they going to go to him? Are they going to go away from him? James Crowder, no, thank you. Jamar Chase. Jamar Chase at 5,000.
I think we got to keep Chris Carson because we just got done praising how well he was going to do against the Titans.
I know, but do we get rid of Brandon Cooks and put in Jamar Chase?
Ooh. My guy, James Crowder. No, Jamar Chase against Chicago. That might be better, actually.
I think
I like Brandon Cooks, though. I'm drinking Brandon Cooks Kool-Aid.
You are drinking the
Brandon. I'll go Jamar Chase as penance for saying not to start him last week.
There we go. As long as there's a reason for it. Plus, we need to. Oh boy, our defensive decisions getting made for us. Well, all right. What we have price wise, we have the Chargers, Cowboys, that's it. Chargers or Cowboys,
Colts.
Or the Colts. It's the Colts down here.
Or the Chiefs.
But they're all. We actually built a lineup that is high priced, Jordan.
Oh, too expensive.
Okay, yeah, we only have the resources for the Chargers or the Cowboys' defense.
Oh, then definitely Chargers.
Yeah,
that's a no-brainer.
I like the Chargers better. All right, so our lineup with only C's as the last name: Kirk Cousins, Dalvin Cook, stacking that Minnesota Vikings offense. Nick Chubb, Amari Cooper, Jamar Chase as what am I trying to say? Recompense. Thank you, Jordan. Recompense for Jordan telling you to sit him. Chase Claypool, the double C. Jared Cook. Chris Carson, another double C. And then the Los Angeles Chargers defense. I like this lineup. This is a good lineup.
It's not as good as our $5 winning lineup, but it's close.
No, nothing will come close. If we don't win on this lineup, but we win on the $5 lineup, on the 30-year-old plus lineup, good job by us. All right, enter lineup. Well done. That is a good, and we're in. There we go. Time to win us $1 million, everyone. All right, and with that is all we've got for you this week. Please rate and subscribe to the podcast on your podcast platform of choice. Make sure you follow us on Twitter at NerdBallFF. You can follow myself on Twitter at Pete M. Rodgers and follow Jordan at Jordan_Smith27. And of course, make sure you check out all the amazing content we're putting out on the site over at nerdballff.com. We have rankings, we have starts and sits, we have everything you could possibly need to set a winning lineup for week 2. So until next week, my fellow nerds,